what I think is really interesting about what's happened so far in the programme is, if we just take a step back and think about it, everything we're discussing is mediated through human beings. Yeah. We don't know how we got here. Science can't tell us how we got here. So the Christians will say it was by fiat through God. Scientists will say evolutionary processes, Big Bang, whatever. That's the one question we can never answer. But what I find very interesting is today is that you'll have one Christian will say something, another one will disagree, and then they agree, and then they move on. Then they disagree, and then they agree. And I find it interesting you use hermeneutics, and you spoke about St. Paul more or less justifying what he did, because the ends justifies the means. I think that's the bit you left out, but that was sort of where you were going. Now, I found it interesting that in the introduction to this program, you can talk about Christianity used to free slaves. It was also used to enslave people like me. Hence William Henry. It's not an African name. I'm an African person.
It was used to justify slavery as much as to free slaves, yeah.
It wasn't just used to justify, it was also used to control and enslave people. It was also used to control and enslave people all over the place, not just in Africa. And for me, what I find very disturbing about these kind of conversations, and cherry picking is a very good word for me, is with many Orthodox Christians, they love to just use whatever justifies that point of the argument. But if you do point out the more unsavory aspects of what is in that book, all of a sudden you cannot even dispute that, which is why I believe it was suggested that it has this privileged position. And why does the Bible have that? I always, one of the things what I always say to people is, knowledge gives you the power to liberate or enslave. The Bible was used by the same Africans who were enslaved by it to liberate themselves. So why can't we look at it as a document that contains some truth, but is not the absolute truth, because it's mediated through human beings?
And also, of course, it is used by Africans and other people as well still to oppress homosexuals, you know, because they take that inference
from Nicky, this is the point that I'm making. You can, because if you give certain status to a book, you can dip into it and find a chapter or a passage or something that will justify any kind of inhuman treatment to any member of the human family, because that humanistic sense is suspended. Why? Because you're using your authority to say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But the real question is, when somebody says, why shouldn't I do that? God says so. Suppose I don't believe in God.
The Bible is not